Live from London, it's Plank of the Week with Mike Graham.
Welcome to Plank of the Week. It's that time of the week when we look at all the plankery that's been going on this week. We've got Steve and Allen, we've got Amanda Devlin, we've got Lance Forman, and we have, of course, Rebecca Twomey. Rebecca, welcome. It's all looking rather good today. It's all very summery looking, despite the fact that the weather is more like winter.
Dress for the season that you want. Not
Dress for the season. That's very good advice. That's official from the Sun showbiz department. Right, let's kick things off. Steve, who have you got for us?
I'm going to go Rishi.
Rishi Sunak. So soon.
Yeah. I should say there is a caveat right at the start. This will contain scenes of extreme poverty.
Yes.
So he was asked about how hard his childhood was, and he had to miss out on loads of things. You know, loads of things. Well, loads of things.
Yeah.
He was asked to name one. He said, "Well, we didn't have Sky TV."
Yeah.
This is heartbreaking.
It is.
He had to wait for episodes of Star Trek Next Generation to be on BBC 2 months later.
Yeah.
The poor
And
kid.
he couldn't watch the US PGA tournament, presumably.
Just really gets you in the feels.
It does. But you know what was even better was that it took him so long to actually get to the point where he could think of Sky TV, because you could see that in his mind, while he was thinking, what did I do without? He was trying to think of something that wouldn't make him sound really idiotic. Or something that wouldn't make him sound like he didn't really understand poverty.
But again, be fair to him, he'd spent about a third of a day at the D-Day celebration. So, you know, he was tired.
He had, yeah. And it had run over as well, as we'll find out later on. Let's have a look at what he said.
What did you go without as a child?
We went out with lots of things, right? Because my parents wanted to put everything into our education, and that was a priority.
So what sort of things had to be sacrificed?
Lots of things, right?
Can you give me an example of
all sorts
something?
of things. Like lots of people, there'll be all sorts of things that I would have wanted as a kid that I couldn't have, right? Famously, Sky TV. So that was something that we never had growing up, actually.
When he said famously Sky TV, did he mean famously as in everybody knows this, or famously because Sky's something people have heard of?
Probably just like everyone knows, the one thing Rishi really struggled without.
Famously.
This is back when he was in short trousers, which I think was last week.
Yeah. But all his trousers are short. They don't even touch his ankles.
Yeah, and it's unbelievable for them to, you know, he's not a tall man. But
I mean, here's what he could have said, right? He could have said Gucci loafers. He could have said a Lamborghini. He could have said, you know, Eton, which he didn't go to.
That's
he
true.
went to Winchester. You know, come on, it's not as good, is it? I mean, Lance, have you ever seen such a performance in the political arena?
Well, I actually cancelled my subscription to Sky TV earlier this year, so I don't think it's a good thing watching Sky. I think it's a bad thing watching Sky. So actually, not watching it is probably a privilege.
Yes,
you've gone poor. What's happened?
No,
it's the cost of living.
He hasn't done it because he hasn't got any money. Don't worry about that.
Just watching it, it's just so depressing. It's all so lefty, and I just hate the stuff that's coming out of Sky News. So I'm a Talk TV man.
When Keir Starmer said, "Oh, yeah, I didn't have Sky TV either," and it was actually because he was 26 when it came out, so he didn't grow up with it.
And it's actually a great kind of summation of the way the campaign is going, isn't it? Because these politicians come out and say a statement which is, on the face of it, completely and utterly, you know, missing in any kind of fact or reference or context, you know. So Keir Starmer's right to say, because they don't argue about it for days on end, you know. Well, he was right to say that he didn't have Sky TV. He just didn't point out that there wasn't any Sky TV.
I think he hopes that most people don't have Sky TV after the Sky debate, but he had this week.
I think he wishes most people didn't have it actually the other night when they were watching
it.
But Kevin O'Sullivan, as you know, is a man of some talent. He's also been confessing to something that his childhood was missing.
What did you go without as a child?
I went without lots of things.
So what sort of things had to be sacrificed?
My parents couldn't afford to take me to the Ivy. We had to go to Nando's, for God's sake. We were so poor, we had to paint our feet to look like shoes. We had to go on camping holidays without a tent. Stop, sorry, I can't go on. Stop filming.
It's a bit like that Monty Python sketch, isn't it?
Yeah, the 40 Yorkshireman.
That's like looking at Brad Pitt,
we're happy, even we're poor.
Yeah, well, I used to be deprived of choice in my school lunches because my parents always put smoked salmon sandwiches in every single day.
There you go.
But I did.
That's only because it was free from the family shop, though, wasn't it?
Well, of course, but I swapped them with everybody else for jam. So I was the best. I had most friends of anyone in the prep school.
This is the problem though with this campaign very much, is that I think a lot of our politicians are trying to go viral on TikTok and social media. So they're trying to say these things to be relatable because I think they've been trained. It seems to be that they're trying to sort of have clickbait as well. So if he says like, I don't have Sky TV, he thinks, yeah, everyone will see that on TikTok and suddenly relate to me. Whereas, you know, back in the day, we used to watch full, you know, election campaigns,
Yes.
used to be televised, and there wasn't the sort of editing process. And I think they're all being a bit victims of the way social media is portraying.
The reason they're doing it wrong, if you want to go viral, just do an Ed Davey and fall off a thing.
Yes. Well, we'll have a look at him. We'll have a look at him in a minute, actually, or we can have a look at him now. Here's Ed Davey, not actually falling off anything, but being very remarkably unpolitician-like. He's enjoying it, though, isn't he? You can see he's having a good time.
He's having the best time.
Also, can I just say that is the crappiest water flume I've ever seen. I mean, it literally goes down for about two feet, and then goes on the flat. It's one of those you have to get up on and just walk off at the end because you're supposed to hit the end of it with some speed, aren't you?
It's a live performance of the Tory poll numbers.
Yeah, the luge to nowhere, as we used to call it. But you know, let's go back to Rishi Sunak because you mentioned D-Day, of course, and that was the biggest blunder probably thus far of the election. But the worst thing was as he walked into that interview that he did with Paul Brand, which we just saw, which went out almost a week after he recorded it. The first thing he said was, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm late. I was at the D-Day celebrations. They ran over a bit." And you're going, "They ran over a bit." So you just you've more or less said, whether he thinks he said it or not, he's more or less said, those bloody veterans and, you know, that war, that whole,
he didn't mean that.
It held me up.
I think anyone would walk into a situation and you would try to be polite and you've got manners and you would say, you know, I'm really sorry about that.
You're defending him.
He was completely defending him.
Really?
Yeah,
no, but he knew the mics were on. It's a stupid thing to say. I know he didn't.
It is,
I know he. And then he said.
That makes me like him more because I don't think he's
Really?
politically savvy at all. This
You're
is
the
why
only
he's doing really badly. But I think that he's just a nice...
that's not politically savvy to be your Prime Minister.
Totally not. And he's not going to be. Yeah. But it's the fact that he was going into that just being like a genuine human. He wasn't thinking politically. He wasn't thinking about his mic, whereas everyone else...
No, hang on. You say he wasn't thinking politically, but he actually left a battleground where the 80th anniversary was being held of the commemoration of D-Day to do a political interview. You don't think he was behaving politically?
He'd done his duty over
But he hadn't finished, though. That's like going on the boat.
It's hard to defend him, and that's what he would say, is that he keeps going on and saying, you know, it was a huge mistake, and it's been a defining moment of the campaign so far.
Also, I think...
But I really think that when he's getting asked about it constantly, I mean, we're days later, and he's still being questioned about it, what more can he say? The guy messed up, and he held his hands up.
Massively. And, of course, afterwards, in the Sky debate we were talking about, he was asked about it again, because that's what happens in politics.
Yeah.
And he said, of course, he didn't mean to cause any hurt or upset to the veterans. Well, let's hope not. Because if he wants to do that as well, then, you know, he just doesn't seem to know what to say at any point.
Starts to look like he doesn't want to win. Like they had plan one.
Secret agent.
Let's talk about national service to get rid of all the young votes. Those old people still want to vote for. What can you do? Get me out of this D-Day commemoration early. Let's offend those.
Yeah.
He's managed to find a way of upsetting everyone. When he called the election, he thought, OK, maybe he will pull some sort of rabbit out of the hat and close these poll numbers. He's trying to do the opposite.
Yeah. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Just to cheer everybody up, let's go back to Ed Davey. Here he is in a teacup.
Oh, no.
Mental health, well-being of our kids is really important.
What about the economy? What are you doing on the economy?
Yeah, we've got to get it growing again, and that'll be helped by cutting the NHS waiting list, also by getting a much better trade deal with Europe, and by investing in the skills of our young people. So, you know, we've got great policies for the economy, including the cost of living.
He's having a great time.
A couple of people on that roller coaster, by the way, looked as if they didn't want to be there. They're looking a bit green around the gills. It was going to go.
At least Rishi Sunak is serious, unlike
Ed now,
Davey.
Here's my other favourite moment with Sir Keir Starmer. This was at the Grimsby Grim debate that they did this week, and here he is talking about his parents.
I accept I earn a lot of money in the job I am now in. But when I grew up, my dad was a toolmaker. He worked in a factory. It's true. My mum was a nurse, and actually we couldn't make ends meet.
And there he was saying that his father was a toolmaker, which, you know, now results in people just falling about laughing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the funniest election campaign I think we've seen for a while.
He did mention it in the manifesto again. So he
Is it
clearly,
in there?
Yes, he mentioned it.
I didn't get that far, I'm afraid.
And he just said, you know, he just had to remind everyone because, I mean, what kind of percentage of the population doesn't know that his dad was a toolmaker? That's what I want to know.
Although if you talk to Labour people, they'll say, yeah, but we have to keep saying it because in focus groups it shows up that people think he comes from this working class family, which he really didn't.
Sir Keir.
Yeah, Sir Keir, the lawyer, the KC. Yeah, I mean, anyway.
As a stand-up comedian, you don't lead with something like that because your father was a toolmaker. It's an easy joke to say, well, he's made you, you're a tool.
Yeah.
You just don't leave your chin out like that.
Yeah.
No, you don't. But then that's why they're not stand-up comedians, and they should never talk about football either. Anyway, over to you, Amanda. What's your first one?
Joe Biden.
Oh, yes.
Another kind of political...
He was also in trouble for leaving early at the old... just saying, in case you want to defend him for that. I just want to get that in early.
But he didn't know what day it was.
No,
so
he didn't even know he was in France, to be fair.
He didn't know where he was.
Thought he was in New Jersey.
Yeah, so he's... I don't know if you've seen that clip that's gone viral where
Yeah.
he looks like he's trying to sit down in a chair that's completely invisible. It's not
Yes.
there. And
we have it right here.
Great.
We can talk as we're watching it because we don't have any sound on it. But there he goes.
I mean,
I'll just sit down here on the chair.
Oh.
And then she grabs him and sort of whispers.
I couldn't
There's
have been
no
anyone.
chair.
I couldn't have been on that stage with him because I'd have just been panicking. Like,
Yeah.
what are you going to do next? And that's what it seems to be every
Right.
time we watch Joe Biden now. We're all watching like from behind our hands, through our fingers, because we
Yes.
think, well, what is the next catastrophe? It's a bit like
Yeah.
the Tory campaign. It's like, what isn't
Well,
going
it's
to
a bit
happen
like Rishi
next?
Sunak. People start to feel sorry for him. And they start. He had that look on his face this week, that Joe Biden always has on his face, which is kind of just staring off in the middle distance somewhere, not really sure why.
And obviously it sparks huge concern about his age, his health, and what that means for the future. If this is someone who could get re-elected and then we've got another 4 years, his health is obviously deteriorating in front of our very eyes, and that's
Yes.
really sad.
Right.
But it was, I think, in that kind of setting, and then these videos, they just go viral so quickly, and when people laugh at it, and actually it's just,
Well, there's
it's
a lot of
terrible.
them.
Who's
Except-
letting him on there and doing that and letting that kind of play out? It's
Except
awful.
that video was edited to make his health look far more. Shocking to make his health look far worse than it actually is. It's sort of.
What, you mean this one here? What, the sitting down one?
I reckon it was done by Hamas, actually, because that's what they do. They make everyone's sort of health look a lot worse than it actually is. So,
well, they may have done, but I haven't touched this one, though, because this is a real one
But this
we've
is
got.
a clip because the longer version of this is what's
Exactly.
actually more scary.
Have a look
than,
at this one. This is him standing at the sort of White House celebration of June. I didn't know they were pagans, but apparently they celebrate June in the White House. And everybody else is dancing. That's George Floyd's brother standing next to him, by the way. But he just seems to stare, not move. Everybody else is kind of moving along with the music and the beat. But he's not. Oh, the fist bump.
He'll feel that tomorrow.
I mean, it's like this. It's like slow motion, isn't it? It's really sad. It is sad. There's another one from...
Step in.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was saying the team need to step in a bit because there is that first video, there is a longer version where the chair magically appears. Now, there's a bit of debate over which bit's true. Does someone, put the chair in to kind of show that he's not going
side as well?
Yeah, it's very bizarre, but I think I mean, I keep going on about the power of social media, but this is the way things are playing out now. Like that clip has gone viral, but what's the real story? There's two versions. What's the real editing process in this? Because it's obviously very scary to think that he is in.
I think the problem is we see that he is constantly being prompted to do things and not to do things. And I think perhaps he was told, when you get up there, we'll stop and then we'll sit down. But you didn't realise that the chairs hadn't been put out yet or something like that. But apparently the reason that he doesn't vacate the White House and is still running is because Jill Biden doesn't want to vacate the White House. You know, it's all down to her. She quite fancies being First Lady for another 4 years. And there's another clip, which I don't think we have today, which is probably the funniest one that I've seen from the D-Day commemorations, which is when he turns around. They're standing, he and Jill are standing with Macron and his wife. And at one point, they're sort of facing forwards. And at one point, for no apparent reason, Joe Biden sort of spins around and starts looking the other way. And they're all kind of looking at him and going, what do we do now? And they all turn around.
Well, you follow
so
the
they all
president,
do exactly
don't
the
you?
same thing.
Yeah,
well, hang on, the president of France is the president in France.
Oh, yeah, that's...
You know, you follow him. But so they all turn around. So Jill Biden turns around, President Macron, and then finally Mrs. Macron turns around, and they're all facing away from the camera.
It's like a social experiment.
It's weird.
It's like just
maybe Marine Le Pen was in the background shouting his name.
Yeah,
I realise I've nominated him for Plank of the Week and now defending him. I'm like, oh, he's old. Oh, he's a statesman. He should be defended. Yeah, I'd let him have a sit down.
Keep him permanently in a chair then.
Maybe you should have one of those
tribute.
You know, those walking sticks that you have that folds out into a chair. You know, you go shooting with, and you can just stick it in the ground wherever you are. Just sit on that.
You can imagine that going badly wrong, can't you?
You can, absolutely. Disgraceful. Lance, you've got your own story to tell today.
Yeah, I'm not the Plank. Well, hopefully not.
I presume you're making it Durham University.
It was Durham University, yeah. So earlier this week I was invited to Durham University by the Durham Union Society to speak in a debate on the
and
Middle
there
East.
it is, look. Looking very dapper. Is that you applying for the James Bond role, by the way?
Never say never. So there we were.
Licence to fish. There you go.
We could carry on this quite a long time. So we were having the pre-debate dinner, and we get a call. The president of the Union Society gets a call from the university saying that there's a mob that sort of appeared, sort of Jew-hating sort of mob that appeared. And
a mob? It's quite a small mob, isn't it?
And it is a small mob. So this is the ridiculous thing. There were about 40 of them, apparently. And they'd sort of done a human chain around the building, and the university said that the debate's going to be cancelled. And the Durham Union, its motto is free speech since 1842, obviously till 2024. But this is ridiculous. You know,
I was going to say, sure, that wasn't the time on the 24-hour clock. You know, you've had dinner now, so it's now 18:59. You'll have to get out.
The police could have easily cleared them away. The university gave way, and they're now claiming. The university is now claiming that the event wasn't cancelled; it was postponed. It's absolute nonsense. Because if you postpone something, you have to ask the people if they want to come back. I've never been asked. They haven't even apologised.
No,
so they clearly cancelled it. 200 academics from Durham University supported this encampment that had been set up.
Of course they did.
So it's, Durham have been outrageous. Oh, and the other interesting thing was that it wasn't just us that they wanted to stop, speaking and having this debate. Even the pro-Palestinian people on the other side of the debate were upset, and they were shouting at one of these guys saying, by speaking this debate, you're giving the other side free speech. But then they've got freedom to protest. The university should do what they're doing in American universities now and just tear gas these protesters and just
get them out of the way.
And
what was the actual subject of debate?
It was this House believes that Palestinian leadership is the biggest barrier to peace. The mob in Durham are the barrier to peace, actually, on this.
Well, they're not interested in peace, are they?
They're not.
That is the trouble.
They're just left.
Mind you, I'm surprised that technically during the summer of malcontents, whatever you want to call them, that they're even there to protest, because most of the protests around like Oxford and Cambridge have all stopped because they've all gone off to their holiday homes in the south of France.
They don't care now.
Quite a lot of these protesters were they came and
they're not actual students.
They're not all students. They're they have these sort of Facebook groups
and so on, and they've all got masks on as well.
They do.
Which is an interesting way to approach freedom of speech, isn't it?
Exactly.
I want my freedom of speech. Who are you? I can't tell you. It's absolutely mad.
The university wouldn't call them trespassers, would they? They wouldn't officially call them trespassers, even though they said they're not students.
They were trespassing.
Which means the police wouldn't intervene, which means it was allowed to carry on, I understand.
The university could have stopped this easily, and they just didn't. And the university knew in advance that this thing was happening, and the society had asked the university to ensure that there was security before the event went ahead, so that speakers like myself could go in and, people that were going to be watching the debate could enter the building. The university did nothing. They were very happy for this thing to be cancelled.
And presumably there were also people who were willing to watch and listen to the debate and sit there while it was going on.
A few hundred people couldn't get into the room. The only people that got into the society were the 10 people that were students that were setting up the debate in advance. And when this mob came and started shouting and hurling abuse, they panicked and they locked themselves in. And we met them afterwards. They managed to get out about 3 hours later. They were in tears. They felt seriously threatened. And this is just appalling on behalf of the university. Really bad.
It's awful. Some of the stuff that's happening at the moment around all of this is disgusting. Anyway, Rebecca, let's move on to you. It's a slightly lighter-hearted moment.
Yes, let's rebalance. So my nomination for you is BP.
Yes.
Now, they have sent an email round last week to their 90,000-strong staff saying, you need to tell us if you're having relationships at work. Now, the initial policy is that you can't manage anyone that you're related to or in a relationship with, but they're also asking 4,500 managers to declare any relationships they might have had since 2021.
Yeah, that's going a long way back. I can't remember what I was doing.
Well, it depends how many affairs you're having.
Luckily, I don't work for Beyond Petroleum, who have already gone mad by renaming themselves Beyond Petroleum. Because they didn't want to call themselves British Petroleum, because Barack Obama told them, it was a nasty, colonial, horrible organisation.
Yeah, they must make sure they're also PC in all of this. So it comes after their former chief was let go in September because...
The wonderfully named Mr Looney.
Yes, Mr Looney wasn't completely clear about the workplace relationships he was having. But what's really interesting
is... He was really, let's face it, I mean, you're a relationships counsellor, I hope you won't mind me saying this, he was doing a lot of shagging in-house. I think we can say that, I think we can.
That's what you were alleging, which is not true.
Well, that's what he was accused of doing, and he missed out on £32 million worth of bonuses.
So
I'm pretty sure that if he wasn't doing that, he might have gone, excuse me, you better give me the £32 million.
Yeah. It better be good to be worth that.
Most expensive shag ever.
It was stupid because he could probably do that outside of the workplace instead of losing his massive wage. But I think...
Sorry?
I said wage, people.
I've lost my massive wage.
I knew it would turn down this week.
I know, I'm sorry. I apologise.
So colleagues now have to declare it because I think it's an isolated event, you know, a chief of a massive company having to declare the relationships. It obviously jeopardises certain things. But I think when it comes to just colleagues together, I mean, 1 in 5 people meet at work still. Yeah. And if we want to, you know, increase the population, which is, you know, going the other way, don't we want people to meet at work?
Right.
And if
is it only 1 in 5 now? It used to be. I thought it used to be more like 4 in 5 people actually met their
It was
partner
very
at work.
high, but dating apps came along and kind of
right.
crashed.
And
people are working from home.
It must ruin it. You just get to
working
meet
from
your
home's
wife
ruined
all the
everything.
time.
You know, people can't get out to see their mistress. It's an absolute nightmare. During lockdown, people were really complaining. It was dreadful.
BP's new policy now is that if you're found in the sack, you get the sack.
Yes, exactly.
If you don't declare, if you don't declare it, you're now getting the sack.
HR are going to be so busy.
Can you imagine? But also, what I mean, we talked about this on my show earlier this week. I mean, what exactly constitutes a relationship? I mean, because you can be having all sorts of flirtatious, you know, exchanges with your work colleagues on you know, social media or whatever.
I just wanted to wink at you.
Yeah. I mean, you could be caught winking at somebody, and somebody goes, because what somebody said this to me this week. They said the great thing about people who have affairs in the office is they think nobody knows, but actually everybody knows. Yeah. And so it's not really a secret. But then what happens if, say, for example, you get shopped? You know, Amanda goes and tells HR that you're having an affair with Lance, and suddenly, you know, all hell kicks off. And what do they do then? Do they have to then approach Lance and say, what are you doing? You know, why are you doing it?
It depends on the power dynamic, though, because ITV, after the Philip Schofield scandal, they decided to say to all their staff, you to tell us if you live with people as flatmates, platonic relationships, you know, if you've got friendship groups. And at what point does it go over the top? Because
and ever since then, this morning ratings have gone like that. So, I mean, obviously, you know, no sex is no good for the ITV crowd.
But positive, you know, relationships at work, be they friendships or of a sexual nature, does help productivity. Yeah. It is a positive thing. And if you have to embarrassingly go to a very stiff HR person who works for the company...
What kind of
everything I say is going to be misinterpreted.
This is, I mean, we're like children. That you wouldn't expect... You wouldn't expect. You wouldn't expect the HR person to be stiff while you were talking to them.
That's because of your filthy minds.
Yes.
And uptight, is I allowed to say
no,
that?
Well, that's
no, I think so.
Okay,
no,
an HR person who works for the company and protects the company.
Yes.
And you have to declare that you're sleeping with someone in your team.
Yeah.
It feels so wrong.
Also, that's just not very sexy. It's not going to make you want to fancy people at work, and if you've got to go through forms and stuff, that's just going to be boring.
I mean, imagine you have to go sort of confess to seeing somebody that still works in the business, but maybe has now been promoted in some area, 4 years ago. And then they have to go to that person and go, oh, so-and-so, you know, this slime ball over there has just said he was having sex with you 4 years ago. You know, how's it going to work? I can't see how it's going to work.
You have to show them a picture of how they looked before. Be like, they didn't look like that. It was so much better looking.
And who would the head of HR confess to?
Yeah, well, quite.
Yeah, themselves.
It's an absolute nightmare. It's fascinating, though. Well, that was a great start, wasn't it? I mean, we might as well go home now. I don't know. It's got to be one of those 4. Coming up, though, we're going to be looking at some beauty queens, beauty pageants in America, a little bit of animal activity as well, and no more laughing at the back. We've done enough of that. This is Plank of the Week. Back after this. So, it's now time for our weekly look at the United States of America, and particularly their beauty pageant season, because there's been a recent beauty pageant in Alabama. Now, Alabama, you wouldn't necessarily associate with, you know, the sort of very modern and trendy part of America, would you? I mean, you think of Alabama as a kind of Confederate flag and, you know, people shooting at each other and that sort of thing, which is, I'm sure, entirely prejudicial. But let me unearth for you the new Miss Alabama, because we've got a clip for you.
A crowning achievement, 8 years in the making. Sarah Milliken of Atmore has competed in the National American Miss program since she was 15.
I didn't give up on this dream, and now, because I didn't give up on it, I get to be the next Miss Alabama and wear this crown for a year.
Milliken hopes to send a message to all girls and young women, not just those who compete in pageants.
No matter what your body looks like, no matter where you come from, you can do anything that you set your mind to.
No, I don't mind having, body positive kind of images, and I don't mind our children being told you don't have to look like, a supermodel, and you don't have to be skinny, and you don't, But crowning somebody that looks like that as Miss Alabama, I'm sorry, I just think it's totally and utterly mad. Isn't it? Bonkers.
Do you remember that beauty pageant we spoke about last year where it was the short-haired girl?
Yes, that was in France, wasn't
Everyone kicked off about that in France.
Because they said girls shouldn't have short hair.
Yeah.
Right. Which is a bit weird.
I think we've just got to, I think it's always got to go back to about being healthy, and I just don't think we should be looking at it in a superficial way.
Yeah.
I think it's about health. That is not promoting health. And
She doesn't look healthy to me.
World peace and all of this stuff.
But she could be lots of things. I mean, she could be Miss, Burger 1995 or something. But, I don't think she can be Miss Alabama. Because if you look at the other women in the picture, we can have another look at it.
I'd love to know what they thought of it.
I think they were all pretty horrified. But there's been a huge debate now going on now, because as you can imagine in America, all of the PC brigade are saying, well, what's wrong with making her Miss Alabama? I think that sends an equally difficult message to children. Yeah, look, and I just think, if that's the model of that Alabama wants to promote to the outside world.
Part of the problem with the story as well is she's saying that she's got a lot of trolling online, but the online trolls have pointed out that she's unhealthy.
Yeah.
That's not trolling, is it? If you were to imply that she's not beautiful, that you could say, why be that mean?
Right.
But if you're just saying you've got a BMI that medical science says is not healthy, therefore you're not healthy, you don't need to compete in these things. You don't need to play the game of... Look, my BMI means I'm overweight. That's why I'm not stripping off trying to win
but you wouldn't expect to win muscle man competition.
And if I went for it, if I put myself out there and wanted all of the good feeling of being part of this pageant, I'd also expect a little bit of reality to come my way.
The other reason this is causing problematic issues in Alabama is that there is also a Miss America competition where they take a candidate from Alabama, and they haven't taken her. They've taken somebody else, because the Miss America competition is very much a sort of traditional beauty pageant where the women are judged on how they look. I'm sorry. I mean, let's not forget, beauty pageants are about beauty, aren't they?
Well, they are, but there's different... Oh, gosh, this is a bit geeky.
Yeah, but you're going to go, but she's beautiful on the inside. There's an awful lot of her, though.
I'm not going to get into the whole what's beautiful and what's not, because that is down to the individual, to what we will find attractive.
I don't think it's down to the individual, to who finds that attractive. If you find that attractive, I think you need help.
Some people will find that attractive, and that's not really... I don't think, Mike. What I think with the different beauty pageants is that there are different categories, and some beauty pageants are based on swimwear. So that's not one she won. That wasn't part of this pageant. Well, some people might find that attractive, but others might not.
Yeah, they couldn't find a swimsuit for her.
And then other...
Look, I can be as horrible as like. People tell me I'm fat all the time. I don't care.
Oh, yeah. I believe in the freedom of speech. Please,
but I won't appear in front of you in a swimsuit either. You'll be glad to know.
What there should be, perhaps, is there should be a plus-size beauty contest.
No.
And then if she won the plus-size beauty contest, I feel like that would be a fair competition.
This isn't about beauty, though. It's about, it's about health. Obesity is not a good thing. And I did hear an interesting survey sort of not that long ago where I think in certain parts of the country now, 2 out of 3 people have become 4 out of 5 people.
Yes, very good.
There we go.
Very good. You've brought some stuff with you, haven't you? This is great. Yeah. Well, anyway, I understand where you're going with it, and I know that some people will say, you shouldn't just be judging people on how they look, and that's fair and that's good and all the rest of it. But I think it can go too far, and I think that's the example of what virtue signallers end up with. Because when it's the same with the trans argument, you'll end up with a trans woman winning a beauty contest, and people will go, oh, but she thinks she's a woman, so that's fine. Well, maybe Miss Alabama thinks she's thin, but that's not really very healthy.
It's like the world has shifted too much to the other side, because now you've got, if I went into that beauty competition and I saw her, I would assume that she was going to win in this day and age. Whereas she'd have been laughed out of that competition.
They just go, forget about it. Yeah.
Whereas now you kind of do feel like they're getting publicity for it, you know, and it's creating this kind of talking point, isn't it? And that's why they wanted to do
She's
it.
now complaining, though, as Steve said, because she's getting trolled all the time.
And it's your choice if you want to be unhealthy. Smokers choose to be unhealthy. Good luck to you, but you don't then fail in the 100 metres and then cry about it because it's not fair because you don't have the lung capacity.
No.
Like, if you want the benefit of something, then you've sometimes just got to put up with the downside. We've seen the internet. We'll get trolled more than she's willing to put up with just for doing this.
No doubt. Hope so. Over to you. Over to you.
The Ian Brown is the guy I want to put forward for the next one. Not the musician.
Not the Stone Roses guy.
No, otherwise, although, you know, drugs don't work, as we'll find out in this particular medical case.
I think that was the verb.
He's the carer who worked in a home for offenders with mental illness. He made patients go out and clean his car, which also means he was struck off. It also means we need to arrest Mr. Miyagi, because if you think about it, he was training in karate, but he got all that painting done. He got his car waxed. Someone needs to look into this.
Yes.
So this guy said he gets these patients to go and clean his car, and he said it's more productive than just sitting outside smoking, which I think is wrong about.
Yeah.
Because smoking, the amount of duty you pay, you are an economically active unit. Whereas stopping this guy paying someone 10 quid to clean his car, if anything, you've suppressed the economy.
I mean, his argument is that this is better for the patients, right?
But the reason he's struck off is because he got 4 of them cleaning his car. Only 2 of them were like allowed out to the car anyway. So he's breaking the rules. He was given warnings before. He left the door open and someone escaped. There's more reasons than just getting his
So these
car
are not necessarily just people who are suffering a few mental health problems. They're people who are sort of, you know, in a secure unit.
Yeah.
In other words.
Well, it was secure until he left the door open and went and cleaned his car.
The other thing, of course, if he's giving them jobs cleaning cars, he's actually taking away jobs from illegal immigrants, which is really bad.
Yeah, well, this is, I think, what he was saying earlier. But that's the other thing is that, you know, he's also not passing the money on to the NHS, which presumably is missing out on a few more quid that they could have stuffed into a diversity coordinator's mouth.
Yeah, there's a bit of Shawshank to this as well, the bit where they realise they can get the prisoners to go and do work and make loads of money. I think he was step 1 of heading towards that.
Do you think he'd been watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest when he went off on the boat that time? You know, who could say? Amanda, over to you.
I'm going for Animal Rising,
Yes.
this animal protest group. And
Yes.
They tried to trash that gorgeous portrait of the king.
Lovely, isn't it? Did they only have one colour left?
I'm not...
well, people said about that portrait when it first came out, it looks as though it's already been attacked by Just Stop Oil.
It does
with a
look
can
like
of
you
tomato
just
soup.
chucked tomato soup over it, exactly. So it's not the best portrait in the world, but they somehow did manage to make it even worse. And that's by pasting posters of Wallace and Gromit over the portrait, and then writing a little bit of speech bubble saying, "No cheese, Gromit, look at all this cruelty on RSPCA farms." I just think, what?
I know.
Shut up.
Well, we've got a clip of what they did. Let's have a look. The thing that always amazes me about these characters is they walk into a museum, you know, with a paint roller on a huge long pole. You know, there's a guy filming it. There's another guy who picks up a huge backpack. I mean, have you ever been to a museum recently? You go in, people look at your bag, they can pad you down, you go through a computer arch. I had these guys on. I had this guy, Ben Newman, on, who claimed that he wasn't one of them, even though he was said to have been one of them in all the reports. He basically said, I said, surely the museums must be complicit in what you're doing. And he said, "What? No, I don't think so." And I said, "Well, are you sure?" And he said, "Well," I said, "What about you?" I said, "You're committing criminal acts." He said, "Well, we weren't arrested because the museums are refusing now to prosecute them."
You know, we've just seen it. We've had the old people that are lying in roads.
Yeah.
And most people just want to run over them now.
Gluing themselves to stuff.
We're done with it. Chelsea Flower Show being trashed, and then like that woman just started spraying with water like over the protesters, which was brilliant. I mean, we're all kind of just fed up of it now, and they need to come up with something a bit more creative.
I hope they try and do the Euros, because German Polizei are not too keen on protesters, are they?
This is the problem, that they won't. They don't want to. I mean, it's because they get away with it here that they keep doing it.
Right.
The other thing is something about the museums, because the only time anyone talks about museums is when a protest has happened.
Yeah.
This is great publicity.
Right.
Maybe
somebody pointed out on my show as well, rather bad taste for them to be doing it to King Charles's portrait, since the King actually is suffering from cancer and is currently undergoing cancer treatment. But the other thing that I got them on was that I managed to discover through Companies House, not a very big search, you can find them very easily, that they have a company which is a limited company. They say it's a not-for-profit company. They've got £100,000 in it. And I asked this guy, Ben Newman, what's that for? And he said, "Oh, that's for our activities." And I said, "Do they pay you a salary?" "Oh, yes." "Well, how much do they pay you?" "I'm not telling you." And I said, "Well, you know, surely this is public money that people are giving you for donations. Surely we need to be told." So the whole thing is a scam. Yeah. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think there must be complicity by these organisations.
There must be.
And it's no different to sort of, you know, what Durham did. There was complicity by the university. I think we need the police to start cracking down. We need proper security in these places.
Educating them, because how does this help the cause? I understand the connection between, you know, the King, cheese, RSPCA, the rest of it, but really, how is that helping animal welfare?
Well, it's not. They also said to us that they go sometimes to farms and steal the animals and give them to animal sanctuaries. Now, you'll probably know more about this than I do, Lance, but people that turn up at farms and steal animals are thieving and they're stealing property that belongs to somebody else. And I said, what do you do with... Also, we find these sick creatures, and what do you do with them? We pick them up. I'm like, well, how do you know that's not damaging them even more? Well, you just run into a sort of place where they're keeping a few pigs, pick a few up, put them in the back of a transit van and drive them somewhere else.
Is this rustling? It's a crime you don't hear about often.
Yeah, it's not. I think it is, absolutely.
But do you think these protesters, or the majority of the protesters, do you think they actually care, or is this just a publicity stunt?
They're all the same people, aren't they?
All the time. Yeah, and I think that it's becoming so gimmicky.
But they're getting away with it. That's the problem. I mean, we had the same thing at my old college, Trinity College, that amazing picture of Arthur Balfour, Foreign Secretary. It was slashed by a student. It was slashed. I mean, they sprayed it, they slashed it, and what have the university done? We've heard nothing. I don't think there have been any prosecutions.
They don't press any charges.
They don't press charges. No. So these people think, well, let's keep doing it.
It's attention seeking. That's all it is. Yeah. It's validation of their opinions.
And if they ever do get to court, usually every judge in the land, because the judiciary now appears to have gone woke, goes, oh, it's a good cause, you're saving the planet or something.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. It is. Anyway, coming up, we're going to be talking about... I'm not going to say Hitler, but it is a bit Hitlerish. And also a very funny story about EasyJet, who are not very happy about a ban, and they're suing them. God knows why. It's all next on Plank of the Week. Welcome back to Plank of the Week. I forgot to say earlier, by the way, that this is, of course, the plank that they're all fighting for, so I'm just going to do a quick one of those. It didn't make any noise. Should we try again? Oh, there we go. Just checking that it was working. Anyway, Lance, over to you. You've got a plank from the Reform Party.
I do. Ian Gribbins, who...
It's a good old-fashioned name, that, isn't it?
It sort of is. And he made this extraordinary statement that... he thinks that Britain should have been neutral during World War II, like the Irish, and not fought against Hitler.
Yeah.
Now, this is pretty embarrassing, I would say, for the Reform Party and for Nigel and Richard. And what sort of surprises me is, I mean, he has apologised, but, you know, why would you make that statement in the first place?
Yeah.
You know, you can't really be a serious
Well, somebody
apology.
once said to me, before I got into the sort of broadcasting business, is don't ever mention Hitler. It never really gets you anywhere good.
You just mentioned
and there's no point. I know, even now I feel bad doing it. Because you don't...
It's not a good look, is it?
It's really not. There's nothing good that ever comes from it.
So they've sort of excused it as we didn't really have that long to vet our candidates because the Rishi called this election, you know, unexpectedly. But just get rid of the guy. And then I think in a tweet, Richard mentioned that Gribbins' father was on his deathbed, and so it's a very difficult time.
I think
if your dad's on your deathbed, you don't suddenly say, "Oh, no, I don't think we should have fought Hitler."
I think he was actually talking at that point about the spokesman for the Reform Party, because the spokesman for the Reform Party had already said something like, you know. It was a sort of a statement that was made in some kind of debate. He sort of tried to sort of poo-poo it, basically.
Yeah, but it was...
And so he was the guy that Richard was referring to, who's under, you know, his father's on his deathbed.
Yeah,
I think.
Maybe.
But I mean, aside from all of that,
but even so, I think the Reform Party would do much better to actually say, look, this is, you know, we can't have people like this. And just
but how? I mean, you've been in this business of running for election. I mean, how hard or easy or difficult is it to do background checks on people?
It does take time. I mean, and the thing was rushed, and that's a concern not just for Reform Party. It's a concern for all of them. Labour are going to have tons and tons of new candidates. The Conservatives, loads of new candidates. We don't know enough about these people, and we will find out in time. But the key thing is, you know, if somebody says something that you completely disagree with, don't make excuses for them. They've got to go. You've got to show them a bit of leadership and just get rid of them.
But it takes a long while to do proper vetting. I think when an election's called, you know, a lot of time, just Google their name and the word Hitler. See what comes up. And if anything comes up...
But it might not, you see. I mean, it might. I mean, it should.
Well, Himmler works as well.
But... He might have got that one.
Also said, I was sort of reading some stuff earlier about allegations that he was saying that women are sponges and should be
that was the other thing, wasn't it? Yeah.
So add that with this combined. Get rid of him. How can you have something like that representing Reform UK? I don't think stands for getting rid of women.
And he's running in Bexhill and Battle, which is the former constituency of a Tory minister. You know?
I guess because if they withdrew, then they would have to not be fighting in that seat.
Well, it would be the same situation, I suppose, as what happened with Labour in Rochdale. Do you remember when George Galloway won up there and the Labour candidate had to withdraw, and Labour didn't have a candidate then.
Yeah.
But he ran as an independent. So I guess this guy would do the same if he was withdrawn from Reform.
Let him run as an independent.
So, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't do them any harm, would it?
Yeah, what's worrying?
No, I mean that's not one of the ones they've earmarked for success. I don't think.
You're completely right about the fact that it's worrying about who we're actually letting into Parliament, because at the moment we're just they're dodgy, but they're just candidates. But there's going to be this election in 3 weeks.
Well, I think
Lance
is right, but also I think the public have a right to know who they're voting for as well. You know, as much as there might not have been time to vet people.
When it's been so rushed.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, there will be loads of journalists, no doubt, once the MPs are all elected, doing exactly what you've just described, only with lots of other words, as well. And there'll be stories going galore for weeks on end. Anyway, over to you.
Well, my nomination is the EasyJet group. So they have very heavy-handedly gone for a small pop indie band from Leicester whose former name was Easy Life.
Right.
This court case was running out last year, and, you know, this poor small group of lads had to club together and waste all their time and money fighting this case because they were taken to court, and had to change their name to Hard Life.
Right.
Now, what's now happened is that they've released a track which was a bit tongue-in-cheek against Stelios, as we all know, the owner of EasyJet. And then the lawyers are now coming back again saying...
Oh, they're coming after them again? Because I said when I saw this was your nomination, I'm sure we've done this before.
Yeah.
Because it was around when EasyJet tried to stop them using their name,
they tried to stop it. It was end of sort of last year it all came about. They released this song. They're a small group, as in terms of popularity and record sales. But they've now gone for them over. It was a joke lyric.
Yeah.
They've said, again, it's defamatory. And it just strikes of that ultra-bullying.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to book a flight to EasyJet thinking they've booked a gig ticket, are they? Or the other way around. You're not going to mistake a band with an airline.
No.
It's like when Hugo Boss tried to, take ownership of the word boss for branding, and we're going after charities, small businesses, taking them to court. The cost to a small business just to rebrand, say, their signage, all their websites, that could cripple small businesses.
Also, it's not as if EasyJet, and they may not forgive me for saying this, have got the world's greatest brand image, have they? I mean, they're known to be a budget airline that doesn't really care that much about their passengers. And if you get caught in the wrong side of an airport terminal, they won't let you on the plane. You know, there's all kinds of things.
You have to pay to take your bag on now.
People use EasyJet because it's cheap. And it gets you from point A to point B usually, but it's not as if it's that sort of silver service type stuff.
It gets you from point A to near point B, and you have to get a connecting code.
Yeah, no, that's Ryanair you're talking about.
The troubling thing for this band, of course, which they're probably not even aware of yet, because I did what you've just recommended and sort of Googled them, or Googled Hard Life. And there is actually a company called Hard Life, which was set up in 2011, and it sells excavation equipment.
Right.
So if there's one company or one band...
Well, it's always going to be the problem. We've got a little...
stop digging.
Yeah, very good. I see what you did there. We've got a little bit of a clip here. This is a fan complaining about the lawsuit.
I'm sure most of you know this band are called Easy Life. They're starting to get sued by EasyJet. EasyJet, yeah. That airline that overbooks everyone and is delayed all the time. They're forcing us to change our name or take up a costly legal battle which we couldn't afford. If you go on EasyJet's Instagram and go on their latest post, I assume it's on loads of them now, the amount of people that are just spamming about Easy Life is hilarious. Just keep mugging off EasyJet because this is an absolute take.
And this is the kind of thing, actually, Rebecca, that can cause companies like EasyJet a problem because, you know, that's a video on YouTube, which has probably not been seen by millions, but it might have been.
If that goes viral,
but if it goes viral,
but if
suddenly,
it goes viral on TikTok, and the younger generation are very loyal to this stuff, they will boycott.
And they'll boycott EasyJet. And that'll be the end of EasyJet.
Maybe Ryanair should sponsor them.
Well, that would be a very good... They made a joke, actually,
Ryanair are already probably behind all of this.
Well, they made a really good joke, which you'd appreciate, saying, Ryan Gosling, start saving some cash, we're going to come to you now, because it is so ridiculous.
Oh, that's so good.
That is bonkers. But, I mean, Stelios really needs to get a sense of humour. He needs to stop suing them, because that is ridiculous, isn't it? What a plank. There we are. Right, well, coming up, we're going to be finding out who's going to win it this week. I won it myself last week because we had to give it to the French after they stopped all the paratroopers and asked them to show them their passports when they parachuted in on D-Day. Very good. Coming up, it's somebody from the BBC for me. My final nomination. It's all coming up next. The candidates in the Bexham and Battle constituency are Christine Bayliss, Labour, Ian Gribbin, Reform, Nigel Adam Jacklin, Independent Network, Becky Jones, Liberal Democrats, Jonathan Christopher Kent, Green Party, Julia Long, Party of Women, Kieran Mullen, Conservative and Unionist Party, Abul Azad, Independent, Jeff Newnham, Independent, Colin Martin Sullivan, UK Independence Party. Well, wouldn't it be a surprise if we did a plank of the week that didn't have anybody from the BBC? I haven't quite decided yet if it's the BBC generally. I think it might have to be, because there's always something to do with the BBC. Because we had, I think, a story earlier this week about how white people are not being welcome to apply for apprenticeships. You know, so if you fancy being an apprentice at the very diverse BBC, you have to be from some ethnic minority. We also had Gary Lineker in trouble again this week, I think, for tweeting about Gaza, saying, you know, if you can watch this and not feel pain for the people of Gaza, you know, then you must be inhuman or something like that, you know. But once again, he got away with it. But the object of my ire this week is a bloke called Alex K. Jelski, who you probably haven't heard of, but he's the new head of BBC Sport, and he's only just got the job. But it was discovered that he wrote a piece not that long ago in a newspaper, I think while he was still running The Athletic, which he used to work for, in which he basically said that, you know, it's all very well listening to people like Martina Navratilova and Sharon Davis about, you know, trans athletes and whether or not they should be in male spaces, but they're not really experts. They don't really know anything about it. Of course, they're brilliant athletes, but, you know, now, apart from the fact that he's clearly a plank for thinking that Martina Navratilova, the world's greatest ever female tennis player, and Sharon Davis, probably the greatest female British swimmer of all time, are not worthy of listening to as experts on the subject to which they were very successful in. They also work for the BBC, right? And in fact, BBC Sport, because coming up at Wimbledon very shortly, later this month, Martina Navratilova will be one of the pundits. And in the Olympics in France, coming up next month, covered by the BBC, Sharon Davis will be a pundit, you know, in whatever they're going to call the Aqua Dome or something in Paris. This guy has been now accused by Sharon Davis, who's gone absolutely, you know, ape over this. She's called him an obvious misogynist because he's done that thing that sort of trans activist men do, which is to try and sort of poo-poo the women who know what they're talking about. And in this case, not just women like J.K. Rowling who know what they're talking about because they're women, but women who know what they're talking about because they're sports women. I mean, it seems amazing to me.
Also women that he effectively employs. So there's going to be a really tense Zoom meeting and they have to prepare for the show. And then there's going to be some court cases, there's going to be a tribunal. That working environment must be considered hostile now.
Yes. Well, if you're Sharon Davis and he's basically said that you're not relevant and you can't be talking about trans athletes, then you're not going to be too comfortable working there. He's also blocked Martina Navratilova on his own Twitter account, right? And she works for them.
Yeah, he wrote a piece, I think, in the Times, where he was saying that he was trying to explain his position on trans sports people and saying that it's all about lazy stereotypes.
Yes.
And when he gave that example, he gave another example. And he said it's lazy stereotypes like, for example, you shouldn't do business with Jews because they'll steal your money. And then the BBC offer him a job. That's all very strange, isn't it?
Well, one of the things that annoyed Sharon Davis about all of this was that he basically said that having separate categories for trans athletes was the same as having separate categories for Jamaican sprinters and Ethiopian marathon runners. And you go, how did the BBC give a guy like this a job? He wrote this before he got the job.
That's why they gave him a job.
I find it astonishing.
I might not understand that, because the category between sprinters and marathon runners are different categories. What am I not?
Yes, they are.
That's not the same race. They don't just bang
but what he's trying to say is that you're basically saying that that Jamaican sprinters are better than everybody else, so you shouldn't allow anybody else. They should only have their own category. And that's as mad. He's saying that's as mad as having a trans category.
Yeah. So has he understood the concept of the men and women's categories?
No.
Because surely he should be in favour of just one category, which most evenings would be won by a bloke.
Yeah, well, exactly right. And that's the thing. I mean, Sharon Davis says, and has talked about this many times, that, you know, there are male swimmers who are not very good male swimmers who will win against female swimmers every time, simply because their body mass is distributed differently. They've got the ability to swim much faster, you know. And look at that, who's that guy? Lyre, I call her, I think. Her name's Lyre, somebody or other. Leah Thomas, there you go. Yeah, I call her Lyre Thomas. She's won loads of swimming medals since she decided to become a she, but she's a bloke. And with all the bits as well. Hasn't even, changed.
It's good to have options, because I've never been good at sport, but it's nice to know I could bronze.
If you turn up down the local swimming baths in a bikini, what do you think they'd say?
Not you again.
Yeah. Very good. Well, listen, it's time to make the. I mean, I think there can only be one plank this week, can't there? I mean, I think I don't even have to ask you. I mean, it has to be the Prime Minister, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm in favour of it. Poor old.
I suppose for balance, we have to say all of them, the entire shower, all three of them.
We have to,
right?
Keir Starmer.
We could have Keir Starmer
for being a robot.
Keir
Sky
Starmer being a robot. With Rishi Sunak for divvying up a D-Day and having to do without Sky.
And David
for just being very wet.
The front of the queue at all the theme parks. Everyone must be so annoyed. Oh, it's the Lib Dems down the front again.
I'm sorry, he's had a better summer than all the school kids.
He must have one of those. He must have one of those freedom passes, right, where he doesn't have to queue up. Get down to Thorpe Park, just stand behind Ed Davey. You'll be all right. So there we are then. So we're giving it to all three political leaders, Rishi Sunak, Ed Davey and Keir Starmer. There's your plank of the week. Thank you very much to Rebecca Twomey. Thank you to Lance Forman. Thank you to Amanda Devlin. Thank you to Steve Van Allen. We'll be back with plank of the week, same time next week.